And I'm going to mute you all. All right. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to our last lessons on kingdom families. We've been learning about all of these different principles, and we want to put them into action. But I also will be talking about something new that I just added with addition. All right. So a new principle that I added in regard to families, and this is so important because we've been talking about this the last week or so. And so I thought I added to the training. I just finished adding it just like 2 minutes ago. So it's new, but it's going to be so relevant. So let's take a quick look at what we did last time. So last week, when we ended, we were doing a survey based on the 4 principles of raising our children. And we're going to look at these 4 principles, but I want to add a 5th one. That a 5th one covers, all of these 4. But so we looked through the principle, and it was a good exercise for us because, when you guys did it, you began to realize, some of you said, I haven't done such a good job. I'm a 3, I'm a 2, I'm a 4. Well, 4 is really good, actually. But most of us are not at a 4 or have not been at a 4. Most of us have been like at a 2 or 2.5, a 3, 3.5. And we realized that we haven't really followed God's ways. We've used man's ways, we used our ways, but then we were able to reflect on all of that, and the result of which is that we want to change, and we can even restore our family and our relationship with our children, even though there might be adult children. So that's all good news. So it's all based on this. It's all based on the kind of life that you and I want. What kind of life do we want for ourselves? What kind of marriage do we want? What kind of family do we want? And if we truly want the kind of family, the kind of life that God wants you and me to have, then we need to decide. We need to walk in the path that He has for us. What are the paths? What are His ways? What are the areas that God wants us to focus on? Because, our focus might not always match up with God's focus. And our priorities might not match up to God's priority. Our priority might be job, education, money. Are those things needed? Of course they're needed. Are those things good? Of course they're good. But the problem is when they become the wrong priority, if they become the number one thing and the number one focus in our lives, then something is wrong. Then, because what are God's priority? So God's priority when it comes to family and children, number one, we need to love them. And that includes relationship with our spouse and love our children, including spending good quality time with them. And sometimes, by the way, people can take these things to an extreme. Some people think loving our children is to give them everything that they want. That is so untrue. If you give kids everything that they want, they learn to be whiners. Love comes with boundaries. Love comes with boundaries. And then number 2, we need to teach them to obey. So that boundary means we will not reward them when they are whining. So we can train them to obey at a very younger age. Little children, even babies and toddlers, we can train them to obey. And then when they get a little bit older children. But here's the thing, here's the point that very few parents understand. When they become teenagers, we need to start guiding them towards God's path. We need to guide them into the truth, into all truth, and the Holy Spirit will help us with that. But we need to help them to start making decisions in their lives because they're turning and becoming an adult. And if you keep telling teenagers what they must do, they need to do this, they need to do this, they need to do this, they need to do this. If you do it all the time, they will begin to resent you. And that's where most parents have problem with teenagers because they don't understand this is a transition time. Number 3, and by the way, we're going to talk about this portion a little bit more later. Number three, don't provoke them to anger. We must learn to live in and establish an environment of peace, of joy, the kingdom life. You know, if you want your family to have a kingdom life, if you want to have peace, joy, love, power, righteousness in your family, then we need to don't provoke them to anger, because anger and fear and all these negative emotion things, it's the opposite of, it's the opposite of the the kingdom life. And lastly, we need to train them towards God's path, God's ways, the narrow path, and then God's plan for them. And I emphasize again, especially for teenagers, because they're turning to be an adult, and we're going to talk more about that. But there's one more principle that we need to discuss. It does run across these 4 different areas that we just talked about, and it has to do with the words that we say to our family, our spouse, and our children, especially teenagers and older kids, because we want to tell them what to do all the time. The reason I emphasize, especially teens and older than teenagers, is because when they're little children, we do need to teach them to obey. But when they become teenagers, we need to help guide them in the right path. So we don't always tell them what to do. There are times we need to tell them, but there are times when we need to start directing them, guiding them into the right path. And we are going to talk a lot about this. But our tendencies, it's something different. Our tendencies, because we're so used to telling our little children what to do, when they become teenagers, we keep correcting them. You're not doing this right. You're not doing this right. Oh, you're not cleaning your bed. You're not doing your homework. You're not, spending enough time here. You're playing too much video game. Not, do. All of these things. We try to correct them all the time. Why do we do that? Well, we have good reasons for wanting to do that. We love them, and we want them to do the right thing. I mean, how many of us want to grow our children up so that they do wrong things? No, we don't want them to do wrong things. So we try to correct them, we nag at them, and so on. But here's a major problem. There's a lot of issues that comes with this here, folks. And, I'm not going to be able to address all the issues, but the environment that we live in, that we have talked about. Look, if you and we don't have a good relationship with our spouse, and we're yelling all the time, and we're angry all the time with our spouse, then it's really, really hard to establish a good, loving relationship. It's really hard to establish the good, loving environment. And that's what our kids will learn from us. But when it comes to the words that we use, the words that we use with our spouse, the word that we use with our children, okay, this is what we're talking about today. See, God made children to become adults. He doesn't want a baby to remain a baby all their lives. He doesn't want little children to remain little children all their lives. He wants each one of us to grow physically and spiritually, to become a mature adult, a mature man, a mature woman of God, mature physically and spiritually. So in all aspects, that we'll be able to take care of ourselves when we're an adult, that we'll be responsible, that we'll do the right thing, that we follow him, all of these things. But most parents don't understand there's a transition period for children to become an adult, and that transition time is the teenage time. That's why in some culture, like the Jewish culture, actually, when a boy becomes 13, he's recognized as an adult. So but in America, 18 or so is considered an adult. Sometimes 21 is considered an adult, depending on, your definition of an adult. But there's a transition time. A transition. A child is a child, but then when they become a teenager, they're transitioning. And if they're transitioning, we need to help them with that transition. Now, I do want to share a couple of things. I'm not proud of this, but I remember a time during my first marriage There was a time when we were in Chicago, and I was actually taking someone to learn about some group of people from our church to learn about emotional healing. And I was pastoring at that time already. And we were in Chicago and we were driving in a van. We had about 7, 8 people in our van. And it just so happened that um, that period I wasn't driving. So my late wife and I, we were sitting in the back and somebody was driving our van. And as we were driving down, I forgot what it was, but my late wife had said something to me. I can't even remember what it is, but I remember it stirred up something in me. And I said, oh, I hate this. I hate it when you say these things to me. I hate it when you try to control me. Because it reminded me of a time in my life, even though when I was an adult, I was in my 20s, I was 25, I was 26, I was 27, I was 28. And oh my goodness, my mom kept telling me what to do. You need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that. And I remember I just hated it. I said, Mom, I am 26 years old. I need to be an adult. Stop trying to control me. Why did I share that with you? Because God made us all, but especially men, but for women as well, but especially men. God made us all to become an adult, and we need to make our own decision in our life. It's something that it's within us. We need to learn to make our own decision. And it starts as teenagers. That's when, that's why you see that teenagers, they start hating it when parents keep telling them what to do. It is that transition time. So our words during that period of time, our words are very important, extremely important. Here's the problem. The problem is that we've been teaching our kids to obey, or we've been wanting them to obey ever since they're little children, ever since they're small. And so when they become teenagers, we, in our minds, we keep saying, we need to keep telling them what to do. You're not doing this right. You're not doing this, you're not doing that. You should be a better example. Look at this person. Look at that person. Look at your younger sister. Look at your, cousin. Look at the way they study. Look at the grades they made. Look at the way they do this. And our teenagers hate it. By the way, sometimes we do that with our spouse. Our spouse hate it. I don't know about you guys, but how many of you love it when people keep telling you you're doing something wrong? The difference would be this. The difference would be if somebody gives you permission and they're learning something. For example, my wife, she's wanting to learn English. So she has told me, can you help correct me when I say something in English that is not right? So she wants me to do it. She's already given me permission because she wants to learn English. Now, if you have that kind of permission, then you can help correct them. But when they're teenagers, it's going to be different. But you're already thinking, you're thinking, wait a minute, how do I do this? Because I love them and I want to guide them in the right way. But if I don't tell them what to do, how are they going to learn what to do? Well, that's what we are going to be talking about. Because you want to be able to guide them. You want to be able to coach them. But let's see what some of the cultures say. Some of the culture will take this to an extreme. You not only tell them what they do wrong, you can't praise them. You can't even accept people's praise for your family. In the Chinese culture at times, Chinese culture in the past, that if somebody praise your wife or praise your children, you can never accept it. You can't even accept it. If they try to say, oh, you have such a wonderful kids. Oh, you have a wonderful wife. You say, no. They're not wonderful. They're so stupid. They're so bad. You don't know my wife. You're not living with her. These kind of comments. Come on, if you're the family members and you hear that, how many of you will get excited? If a wife hear the husband said, oh, yeah, my wife is worthless. I mean, how many wives get excited? Oh, my husband think I'm so worthless. How many children get excited to know that the parents think they're stupid? Well, to think they're not good enough. See, our words are so important. But the Bible, what does the Bible say about all this? How are you and I supposed to love our children and help them choose the right path? Please understand this. Understand the four steps that we looked at. We must love our children and we must teach them to obey, especially when they're young. But with teenagers, here's the key thing. If you and I have a good relationship with them, if we've already been spending time with them and loving them, and we already teach them the boundaries of loving and obeying, when they become teenagers. Now, if we do it right, if you and I are doing it right, then with teenagers, we have a relationship with them. And when we have a relationship with them, okay, then we can guide them in the ways of God with the help of the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit in John 16:13 that will guide us into all truth, guide us into the right path. But if you and I have a relationship with our teenagers, they will come to us and begin to ask us what we think about different situations. Or if they ask a certain question, like if they talk to us about dating, if they talk to us about marriage, if they talk to us about money, if they talk to us about different situations. But here's the problem. The problem is though, a lot of teenagers don't talk to the parents. So as parents, we keep telling them what to do. You need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. So it's already all messed up. So it's a challenge. And if that's a challenge and they're not talking to us, then what does it tell us? It tells us we need to go back to step one. We need to reestablish the relationship. We need to love them. And one aspect of love is to be able to praise them, be able to see the good things in them. Because remember, all adults, starting as teenagers, and even little children too, but more so as teenagers, hate to be told what to do. I hope you guys understand that. Now, there are some special cases, I get it. There are some special cases where some people have so much hurt and so much fear, they can't decide anything, and they want someone to always tell them what to do. But that's based on all of the fears and hurt, and they just don't know how to make decisions. You don't want to grow your child so that when they're 40 years old, they still can't make any decision, and they come to you, Mom, Dad, I'm only 40. I don't know what to eat. Mom, Dad, I don't know whether, I should do this or I should do that. I don't even know how to take care of my kids. I don't know what I should cook. I don't know what to eat. Come on. None of us want that. We want to grow mature children and families. Look at Ephesians 4. Ephesians 4 talk quite a bit about Christian living, Christian life. There's a time for us to speak the truth. Verse 15, instead speak the truth in love, so that we can grow to become, in every respect, the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. And it is true that you and I need to speak the truth in love. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't speak the truth, and correct our kids and correct our family. But here's the problem. If you and I try to speak the truth, but it's not out of love, by the way, if you want to force the truth on someone, that's never love. Because love is a choice. Please understand, love is a choice. You can never force love on any person. You can never force the truth on anyone. Jesus never forced anybody to accept him, and he never forced anybody to follow him. It's not Christianity is never forced. Now, there are other religions that force people into it. You got to do it this way. Otherwise, you're not a good follower. It's forced. Christianity is all based on choice. You can't force it. You cannot force anyone to do so. So the same thing, if you're going to speak the truth, do it in love. Don't force them. Very important. But if we are going to learn to live, I'm going to read quite a bit of passage from Ephesians 4. But if we're going to do it right, so I tell you this and insist on it in the Lord, that you must no longer live as Gentiles do in the futility of their thinking. So this is talking about how we are living. Don't live along like the Gentiles, don't live in the broad path. They are darkened in their understanding and separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to the hardening of their hearts. Having lost all sensitivity, they have given themselves over to sensuality so as to indulge in every kind of impurity, and they are all full of greed. That, however, is not the way of life you learned when you heard about Christ and were taught in him according with the truth that is in Jesus. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your mind, and to put on the new self created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. Okay, so we're talking about the words that we're speaking. So the Bible clearly tells us that we need to speak the truth, but in love. Okay, speak the truth in love. So tie that in, not just neighbor, but tie that into your family. How do we speak the truth in love to our spouse? How do we speak the truth in love to our children? Number one, if we try to force it upon them, that's not love. You can't force the truth in love. Number two, if they're not willing to receive the truth from us, speaking the truth, it's really, if they're not willing and you're trying to force it, it ties back to number one. The key, let me reemphasize, the key to it is that in love, the relationship aspect. If we have love and they love us, then we speak it in love, then it's easy to speak the truth. All right? But here, look at the environment now. Verse 26, in your anger, don't sin. Don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, and don't give the devil a foothold. So, number one, warning, don't keep this anger environment around because the enemy is going to have a foothold. Don't keep it in your house. Don't go to sleep. Don't let the sun go down. We're talking about in your home. Anyone who has been stealing must steal no longer and must work, doing something useful with their own hands. They might have something to share with those in need. And here it is, verse 29. Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their need, that it may benefit those who listen. So look at the environment that Paul painted. Don't stay in anger, because when you're angry and you're always telling your spouse and your children, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're bad, you're not doing this, how come you're not like this, how come you're not like this person? How come you're so bad? Whew. Sometimes people will say, I wish, in front of their spouse, I wish you're like this other person. I wish I never married you. And they say to the kids, I wish you were not like, you were like this other person. I wish you were a boy. Uh, some Chinese parents will tell that to their daughters. They're unwholesome talk. They're not helpful for building up the person. They make the person feel stupid and dumb and unworthy and worthless. So the Bible clearly tells us, don't let any unwholesome talk. But there are many other passages that tells us that we need to praise our family, our wives, our children. A number of passages, including the gift of prophecy. The gift of prophecy is to build up, to strengthen, to encourage. 1 Corinthians 14 tells us that. Many passages in Proverbs tells us to praise. Our wives, it tells us that. Praise our children. We build them up. So you and I must learn to praise our family, especially our kids. By the way, there are some researchers that have done, they said that one negative word, it takes over 10 good words to negate, to balance out one negative word. I don't know. I don't know how they do that kind of survey and research and whatever. But the Bible does talk about how our tongues can bring forth blessing or curses. So, but here's the thing. Here's the thing that parents struggle with all the time. If the children, all right, if the children are not obeying us and they're making wrong decisions, how do we get them to make the right decision and live for God? Because we love them and we don't want them to live a messed up life. Do you see what I'm saying? How can we help them, help to guide them in the right path if they're always doing the wrong thing? So our mind is, if they're always doing the wrong thing, we need to tell them the right thing. They need to do this, they need to do this, they need to do this, they need to do this. But the question is, does it really work? It doesn't, for the most part, work. But we keep hoping that some of it will stick in. Now, please understand me. I'm not saying that we should tell them what to do 100% of the time. There's a place for it. But I'm saying that our children as teenagers are transitioning. It is best if we learn to help guide them and help them make the right decision. But we can present to them different choices, but we present one of the choice is the path of God. And what's the benefit? We can share testimonies, we can share good things about it, and we help them learn to make the choice. You see the beauty of all this. If they began to make the right choice, it will become a part of their lives. But you say, man, that takes time. That takes a lot of effort. Well, it's true, it takes time. But you look at all of the effort that people put up when they try to help dysfunctional kids. Kids are in drugs, kids that are depressed, kids that are cutting themselves. Kids that don't listen and they're making wrong choices, that when they get married, they have all kinds of dysfunctions in their family. Now look at all of the time that goes with all of that. But look, here's the key. Did I mention to you about the key, the key, the key, the key? The key to all of it is our relationship with them. The key to all of it is the love relationship. If you and I have that kind of love relationship with them, they will approach us regarding different situations of life. They will initiate it because they know that we love them. And when a person knows that they're loved, they're more willing to open up. That's why our teenagers can talk to us about different things. See, some of us as parents, we get nervous. We get scared when they talk to us about some deep topic. I mean, come on. If they talk to us about dating, no, you shouldn't date. If they talk to us about marriage, if they talk to us about money, if they talk to us about sex, ooh, very difficult. We never think it's possible. If they talk to us about where to go for schooling, anything. See, the beauty about all of this is that when they bring up something, then we can help guide them in all truth. We can help guide them in the right path. Oh my, what I'm sharing with you guys, for some of you seems like it is so hard, so new, because you haven't done that maybe. But it is the path of God. Look, you and I want what's best for our spouse, what's best for our family, what's best for our children. But some of us have been trying to keep telling them what to do, what to do, what to do for so long. And they never change. Every so often we see a little bit of a change. But by the way, even if a person changes because they're forced to, it's different than they change because they want to. Do you understand the difference? If they do it because they're forced to, when they get out of the house, they're going to say, I don't have to do it anymore. I'm going to just live my life the way I want. So they rebel. Why do so many children rebel against Christianity and their families? Because they were forced into it. But if they choose to, that's a big difference. Huge difference. Same thing with our spouse. You know, I made a commitment early on in my marriage that I will not try to change Kay. But if I don't agree with something, I can express to her how I feel. I might feel more loved, more respected, but let her know that I still love her. You know, if she does something a little bit differently, if she doesn't change, I will still love her, but it impacts me in a certain way. So I've been learning, Kay and I are learning to try not to change the other person. And to love one another and help the other. Let the other person make their own choice. That's so hard, isn't it? Well, let me summarize those 5 principles. It really starts out with this. It starts out with what kind of life you want for yourself or your family. Remember, maybe your focus may be different than God's focus. Maybe the focus has been more on the physical, on the job, the money, the education. And those are okay. They're good focus, but they're not the number one. What's number one? Do you really want to raise children who love God. That's number one. Do you really want to raise children who have love for the family, for the parents, for the future spouse, for the future children? What's your number one goal? Because if you really want the children to grow up in the ways that God wants them to grow up, then we need to look in the Bible and see what are the number one thing that God wants us to do. Well, the number one thing God wants us to do is to love. We love them. We enjoy time with them. This is the key, the relationship aspect. So if we don't have that, then we want to restore that. Now, with little children, we teach them to obey. Remember, one of the key components of obedience, don't reward children when they're whining for something. And also, remember when they become teenagers, you don't want to keep teaching them to obey all the time. You don't want to keep telling them to do what to do all the time. You want to help to start guiding them towards God's path for them. You know, at that time, you should learn their interests, you know, what they're interested in, and enjoy the time with them and love them. Love their interests. So that should be number one, you know, enjoy not just only time with them, but enjoy the things that they enjoy. Number three, by the way, enjoy the thing that they enjoy. Let me talk a little bit about this. So some of you saw this sign here. It's not 81. I don't know. My screen makes it look like 81. It's supposed to be 18. If you look at it, it's just because of the mirror image reflection. It's actually 18. So my daughter, her name's Eileen, she just celebrated her 18th birthday. And this weekend, actually Saturday, she turned 18. By the way, my son called me about a couple of weeks ago. So my son is 19, all right? So he called me, he said, Dad, I am thinking about coming home for Eileen's birthday because, you know, he's about 10 hours away by car in Tulsa, Oklahoma. What do you think? Do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea? You see, actually, my children at times, when they are trying to make some certain decision, they do ask me certain questions. It's because, you know, I've developed that with them for a few years now. Now, Kay has done an even better job than I have, especially with my daughter. Oh my goodness, Kay is so amazing with young people. You know, she listens to them, she talks to them, she hears them. They love her. My kids love me too. But you know, most men, we don't talk as much as women do. But my son called me and said, Dad, what do you think? And because, you know, I think it's a good idea. You know why? Because my son is my daughter's best friend. The two of them, brothers and sisters, they're best buddies. They love one another. They grew up in the environment. You know, Kay's been living here a year and a half, 480 plus days. And she's never seen them argue with one another except for one minor incident. They love one another. And so it was such a special surprise. So we planned a surprise. She had no idea. I picked him up from the airport. And I went disc golfing because she was still at home. And so Simi and I, my son and I, we went disc golfing together. And we waited until she had a dinner that night with one of my sisters. And so she went to my sister's home. And then we came home. And about 10 o'clock at night, she came back. And we just so happened to have a box in this room, in this living room. And the box, it was a big box. It has some sleeping bags, camping material, from our honeymoon a few weeks ago. We still had the box out there. And we said, what's a good way to surprise Eileen? So we decided for my son to hide in that box, with a red sleeping bag on top of him. We had that sleeping bag on top of the box anyway, so she won't notice. So 10 o'clock, my daughter comes home. And, we asked her, how was your dinner, with your aunt? So how was it? How was that birthday dinner? And so, oh, by the way, we have a present for you. It's in that box. And we worked out the clue, for singing to jump out. And we said, oh, we have a surprise for you. We have a present. It's in the box, but you got to dig for it. And the clue, the cue word was open it. So when Kay said open it, that my daughter, she was already walking close to the box. And when it said open it, my son jumped out of the box like a jack in the box. He jumped out of the box. And my daughter was so surprised. Oh my goodness, she had tears in her eyes. It was so much fun. This weekend, my daughter was so touched. Not just the present from the brother coming home. That was like the best present. We had many surprises for her. You know what my daughter said to Kay and to me? She said, it's like the best day I've ever had in my whole life. Her 18 years of life. She will remember it because we gave her several surprises. The next day, her best friend, female girl best friend, came, from college 4 hours away or so and surprised her. Then we had a dinner. And then we surprised her with a wonderful dinner, Japanese sashimi dinner. And then we surprised her with something else. The reason I was pointing this out about doing things that she likes, we surprised her. We got some really, really good airline tickets. We got some good hotel rooms. We found a room for, instead of $100 a night, it was $40 a night. We found some great, cheap airline tickets, cheap rooms, all of these things. We're going to take her to the Grand Canyon. Yeah, that's one of the, and it was a surprise for her. She even told me she wanted to go to the Grand Canyon just a few days before, but we've already planned it. And she wants to go hiking in the Grand Canyon. Oh my goodness, my goodness. One of the trail that she found was a 10-mile trail. 10 miles hiking in the Grand Canyon. That is going to be extremely challenging for me. Actually, to be honest with you, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not in the best of shape. I don't know if I can handle that. But Kay and Eileen are so excited about it. Doing some of the things that they like. Loving them. Surprising them. Establishing in an environment where you have a lot of peace, joy, and love instead of anger. But we need to train them towards God's path and God's plan. And the number 5 that I added, we need to praise them. But that praise comes into all of these 4 items, because when we praise them and we build a relationship with them, to love them, so it's part of loving them, but it can also be part of teaching them to obey when they're little children. You're doing a great job. It's also, instead of establishing an environment of anger, if we can see the good things and the good character that they have, it's easier to live a life of peace and joy and love. And then it's easier for us to train them in the ways that they should go, in the path of God. So number 5, to praise them, it kind of, that goes into all of the 4. So I left it as number 5, but I want you to know it applies to all 4 of those areas. Be able to build them up and not always say negative things so that we can help them. If you and I have this kind of relationship with our kids, they will come to us and they will want to ask us questions about life, about dating, about money, about different important things in life, about spiritual things, about serving as missionaries. I mean, these are some of the things that I talk about with my kids, about coming home and surprising, their sister. I told my son, I said, Timmy, I think that's a great idea. That's such a loving thing to do. Man, that really strengthened their relationship even more. So the principle of raising a family, these are the 5 principles, but it ties in to the discipleship training that you've been learning on Monday. So I talked about this last week, but I want to end it by summarizing it for you, okay? The discipleship principle based on these 4 steps, the life, the path, the truth, and the calling. So it ties in because if we are going to grow children in the ways of God, we need to disciple them in the ways of God. What kind of life? It starts with us. You need to ask yourself, what kind of life do you want? What kind of life do you want for your family? What kind of life do you want for your children? Number 2, what hinders you and them from walking that path? So we got to remove the stones. And then we need to help them choose that path. And that's the teenage and older. We need to help them choose. We need to present the path to them. It's not always telling them what not to do. It's not always removing the things from them. Okay? How do you help them choose that path? It's when they come and ask you the question and you present to them, well, it's just like my son. My son had a choice. He was thinking about this. He was thinking about, Dad, should I come? So he was trying to make a choice, come or not come. What's the advantage of coming? What's the disadvantage of, coming, for example? Well, number 1, he will have to pay an airline ticket. And, we were able to find one in, it was about $200 or so. So, and he's very good with money. He doesn't like to spend money. He's like me. But it's $200 worth a very special 18-year-old birthday and relationship. What's more important? So he had to weigh that, you see, and make the choice based on that. Now, you might say $200, that's not too much. Well, some of us might think, well, that's a lot, but for some, that's not too much. But for a teenage boy, that's quite a bit of money. So I said, I think it's a great idea because of the relationship. There are some things that money cannot buy. And if you can have that kind of relationship with your sister for the rest of your life, how awesome will that be? Because he's not only learning relationship about his sister, his best friend, but he's also learning about relationship in the future with his wife, with his kids. So I said, it's a great idea. So I'm actually guiding him in the right path. It's a great idea. Why? Because love and relationship is the most important thing in our lives. And then what areas do they need to grow in? What areas do they need to overcome? What areas do I need to grow in? What areas do I need to overcome? Because I need to model this for them. What areas in my relationship with Kay that we need to grow in, that we need to model love, and we need to model the kingdom life for them. And then lastly, what are their gifts? What are their callings that I want to help them grow in? Their natural gifts, the spiritual gifts, all of these things, so that they can grow in it as well. So all these we looked at last week. If you and I really understand these steps and we begin to live it, we live it and we model it for our kids. The kind of life that you and I want, we need to model it. How do we live it out? How do we interact with one another? How do we prioritize our lives? Is it really true? Many of us say we want God first, and we want our children to put God first. But is it really true that we want God first? By the way, there was an interesting incident yesterday. Kay and I are discipling uh, a number of people, but there was one young lady that we're discipling. And this young lady was struggling with a lot of fear. So her environment has a lot of fear. She's in a lot of fear. Her parents have a lot of fear. So she get a lot of fear from her family. Because when she talks to her mom's always saying things that are very fearful. So, so she lived in this kind of environment. So we were helping her. So when we were discipling her, we were teaching her the kind of life that we can have based on the Bible. We can have the kingdom life. We can have more peace. We can have more joy. We can have more love. So we're teaching her all of this thing. And she's very depressed, by the way. And so she was kind of scared to be discipled by us because she had some bad experience with that. But finally she agreed. And then she get excited and she wants that kind of life. So yesterday we were talking about the fear. She's been having insomnia, very hard to go to sleep. And usually when people have insomnia, it's usually due to some sort of fear or worry. So we asked what she's worried. She's worried about the future. She's worried about different things. And so we help her get rid of it. But she said, I really can't get rid of it. I said, why? She said, I can't get rid of it because I'm afraid that it's all going to come back. Even though she gets rid of it, if she gets rid of the fear, they're going to come back. So I asked her a very simple question. I said, so I asked her a very, very simple question. I said, what is something that you do every day? And then she said, well, I said, do you brush your teeth every day? She said, yes, I brush my teeth every day. I said, why do you brush your teeth every day? She said, because I don't want cavity. And I said, are you able to do it every day? She said, yes, I'm able to do it every day. I said the same thing. What kind of life do you want? Well, if you don't want fear, you don't want to live a life of fear. If you want to live a life of the kingdom, if you want more peace, more joy, more love, if you don't want a cavity, you can brush every day. If you don't want the fear and you want more life, then why can't you do it every day? She started laughing and she said, I think I can. And she's beginning to choose that kind of life. It was a breakthrough for her. So the life the path, remove the stones, teach the children to obey, help our teenagers to learn to make good decisions. By the way, let me point something here about the path. Proverbs 22:6 tells us, train up a child in the way that they should go. When they get old, they won't depart from it. It's possible that in the process, they might turn away from the path in the way of God. It's possible. But eventually, if it's in their heart, they'll come back to it. So this is so key, especially for teenagers and older people. How do we help the children, the teenagers, choose the right path? And this has been our topic, part of the topic today. When you have a loving relationship with them, when we learn to praise them, and then when we can see the situation. Like, for example, I want to throw some practical examples for you. For example, when you see your kid, let's say they're teenagers, and the kid is not helping out around the house. And maybe you have other siblings. Maybe she has other siblings that are good at helping, but you have a kid who might be a teenager, 16, 17, 18, whatever, and they're not helping out around the house. Your tendency is to do this. Your tendency is to, how come you're not helping? Why don't you look at your brother? Why don't you look at your sister? They're helping. They're so good at serving. You're not serving. You're so selfish. You're so foolish. You're so whatever. So our tendency is to look at the negative things that they're not doing. We're saying, you're not good enough. Your brothers, your sisters are much better. Be like them. We want them to have better character. We want them to make better decisions. We want them to choose the right path, but we tell them negative words that you're not doing this, you're bad, and others are better. And that's the approach that most of us have learned to use. And we focus on what they're doing wrong there. But then we forget about all the good things they've done because we focus on the bad things. I want to point out something. I think my kids are tremendous, but my kids have some areas that they're not strong at, that they need to grow in. Just like me. My son is very good at many areas, and so is my daughter. She's so gifted in many areas, but there are certain areas that they're not good at. One of the areas that one of my kids is not good at is keeping their room clean. And I know for some of you, keeping the room clean is extremely important. So I choose, for me, that's not the most important thing. So I never emphasized it with this other kid. So, but this kid, it's actually my son, but he's so good with people. He's so loving to people. He's so caring with people. He's so good at his academic. He is so good at, other things. So for me, I just decided that's okay. Now, you might not, for you, that might be extremely important. For me, that's okay. So I don't ever talk to him about it. So now he's off to college and he's doing a much better job of keeping his room clean. And he's making the decisions, but he's making some really good decisions about his friendship now. You know what we were talking about? When I picked him up from the airport, he said, Dad, I've really been wanting a very good friend in college, when he's in college. But I want a friend who's really on fire for Jesus. I'm asking the Lord for friends who really is on fire for Jesus. And I want to grow in that. I'm looking for that. I haven't found one there in in my school, but I really want that. I said, come on. That's so awesome. Because he's choosing, look at it, he's choosing his life based on, I want a friend who's really on fire for Jesus. I don't want to settle for a friend, I want a good friend in college who's on fire for Jesus. Because he doesn't want to settle for just any good friend. Why does he want that? Because he wants somebody who will spur him on. He wants to help spur them on to Jesus, but he wants someone to spur them on to Jesus as well. I mean, they're making these kind of decisions in their lives. Why did I share that story with you? Because sometimes we always pick on, look, if you want to pick on your kid or your spouse on something that they're not doing right, you'll always find it. But also keep in mind, no one is perfect. But it's okay, to focus on the things that are most important to you. The question is, what is the most important thing? Focus on the most important things. But I don't know if you can focus on everything and try to get them to change everything. Otherwise, if you gotta do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do this all the time. Anyway, I pick and choose. There's a few things that I don't bother with, but I want to focus on the most important thing. Now, if you're able to deal with more things, that is great. Okay, that's wonderful. But keep this in mind. Help them choose the right path. And then help them to learn to walk in the truth and overcome the things in their lives. Whatever the situation may be. So let's say the illustration that I had mentioned earlier, you have a kid who's not helping cleaning up or helping with the house, but you see good things in them. Talk to them about the good things. Praise them for the good things. Praise them for their gifts and their attitude in the areas that they're serving in. But then when it comes to that area where they're not doing good in, you can talk to them, but in a way that said, in the ways that give them the choice. I've noticed that you have such a leadership gift. And I think God wants to grow you as a leader. And, so you talk about the characteristic of a leader. The leader, Jesus, was a servant. He was a servant leader. What are your thoughts on that? So if you point out the good things that you see in them, and then you begin to show them, Jesus was a leader and they're a leader, but even though they might not be serving that well, but you're a leader. And I know God wants you to be a tremendous leader, but one of the strengths of the leader that Jesus demonstrated for us is to be able to serve. What are your thoughts on that? So you're presenting to them, this is the narrow path. This is the way God. What are your thoughts? Basically, what are your choice? What do you want to choose? But you don't force them to do it. Do you see the difference? So when you see something negative in your kids, you don't always have to tell them you're wrong, but you got to present it along the path of the narrow ways and give them a choice in it. I'm talking about older kids. The younger kids, teach them to obey. Teenagers, there's certain things you got to teach to obey, but other things you have to help them choose the right path and help them overcome areas in their life. And then in the future, on October 19, we'll deal with the calling, the purpose that God has for us. And for those of you who were not here yesterday, we are going to be, or last week, we talked about, we'll take, after tomorrow, Wednesday, discipleship time, we're going to take 2 weeks off and we're going to finish talking about the kingdom family And we're going to start talking about kingdom discipleship from the gifts and helping people walk in their gifts and calling. But we'll do it only on Monday and Tuesday for 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how much we're able to get done. And we'll be finished for the rest of the year. All right. Let me see if I have anything else. That's it. Now, I do have other training on, this should be session 7. I'm not going to teach it. If you have little children and you have problem teaching them to obey, and there are a number of teaching out there about how to teach children to obey, I can help you with that. And I was thinking about it, and I said, well, I don't know of too many who's currently attending that have small children. But if you have small children and you're having a hard time with training your kids to obey, you can ask me the question either now in a few minutes when we go to our QA time, or you can ask me personally and I will answer those questions for you. But most of us don't have those small children who's are attending, so I'm not going to address it here in the training. But it's easy to train them to obey. And we've already talked about some of that in lesson number 3. But there's more. And if you have questions, you're welcome to ask. So this concludes our teaching for Kingdom Family. It concludes the series on it. And I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself. And I'm going to open it to question and answer. Any question about the topic we talked about, or the whole series, or question about training for obedience? Or any comments?
I don't want to take up. I mean, because if there's not very many people that have children, but I definitely need help with the training for obedience. But I don't know if that's better to do aside or.
How old is your daughter now, Kiki?
9.
9. Okay. All right. Any aspect of obedience?
What we've always aimed for and what we talk about is to obey immediately, cheerfully, and thoroughly. I don't know how good that is as like a goal, but I haven't been able to train her to do any of this well.
Okay. All right. So she's 9 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, 9 years old is still a good time. It's a little bit harder. Let's talk about it. And I know we have a couple of families, who have smaller kids. Rebecca has smaller kids, and there's a few families, not too many, that have smaller kids. It'll benefit all of you. So I'll take a few minutes to talk about it. And if there's any other question in the future, you're all welcome to ask. Okay. I can also do a specific session for you guys, if you need it as well. But let me help address some of that. If you're going to train children to obey, it's very important, that you are consistent to your word. So some basic principle: don't give them what they whine for. Number 1. So if you give the kids what they whine for, you're training them how to whine for something, and you're training them not to obey. All right? But if you want them to obey you immediately during the first command, and you want them to obey you joyfully and thoroughly, okay, well, those are really good goals. Those were my goals. Okay. And my goals when I was raising my kids up was I want them to obey at one command, and I want them to obey joyfully. Okay. So those were my only thing, that they obey joyfully and they obey during the first command. All right. So what would that look like? Sorry, I'm going to mute you guys for a second. This background. Okay. So what would that look like? Does it look like this? If you want them to obey at the first command and joyfully, does it look something like this? I'm going to just use a simple illustration. Uh, clean your room. Okay, let's say you want them to obey you to clean the room. And you can go to them. Son, daughter, clean your room. Or let's say they play with the toy. Clean your toys up. Number one, clean the toys up. And they don't do it. And your goal is to teach them to do it at the first command. And then you go like this. Didn't I tell you to clean up your toys? Clean your toys. That's 2 times. And they still don't do it. And you're getting a little bit angry already. So you go, clean your toys. All right, 3 times. And finally, clean your toys. And you go out and go get your spanking rod. 4 times. What have you done? You've just trained them that you just train them to obey you only when you're very angry, only after 4 times, and they know and they see fire coming out of your head and your face is turning red and the anger like a volcano is exploding. And they said, okay, mommy, daddy, it's about to explode. I'm going to obey. So if we do it that way, we're training them that they don't need to obey us joyfully. They don't need to obey us the first time because we gave them grace 4 times. The parents don't realize, but that's what we've been training them. So if I want to train them to obey, I want them to obey me the first time. Now here's the question. And if I want them to obey joyfully, I am not going to get angry. I'm not going to yell at them. And I'm not going to force it. I'm going to be very happy. Clean your room or clean your toy. And if they don't do it, then there's consequences. That's the thing. And then just be consistent in it. What are the consequences? It depends on the areas of disobedience. There are certain areas I would spank them. And I know that spanking is a bad word now in a lot of culture, but it's because we don't understand the word of God. When they're little children, it's actually good to spank them. Let me show you some verses. I have it in the PowerPoint here. Let me show you some verses about spanking. For little children. All right, I'll go through it really quickly for you. People don't understand children are constantly being trained either for good behaviors or bad behaviors. You can train them in anything, for the sleeping, the eating, for the way they play games and so on. It does take time. Some people say we don't have time, okay? But if you don't train them right, there are going to be other problems in the future. You'll invest much more time, okay? So the goal for obedience is what you just talked about. Instant obedience, joyful obedience. It can happen, but it has to begin with the heart. Okay. By the way, it's hard to train the kids if they have a lot of hurt. If they have a lot of anger and you don't have a good relationship with them. So if you can help them get rid of the anger and the hurt in their heart, it's so much easier. And if they have the love and they know that you love them, okay, so much easier. I hope that makes sense. All right. Okay. Oh, what happened? Oh. All right, here. Can you guys still see this? Yes, I think you should be able to.
Yes.
All right. Kiki, you asked, and you attended Wednesday just for this, so I'm going to spend a few minutes on it. And it should give you a really good background on it, okay? And for those of you who might not have little children, it's good for you to learn this too, because you might have grandchildren and you can help those if they need it in the future. All right? there are different areas of training. The rod, spanking, don't ever reward whining, teach them self-control. There's safety training. There's training about sharing and possession. There's boundaries training, in the games in the books. And it's more than just the do's and the don'ts. Okay, very important. Keep in mind, if you're going to do training, train them in the home, not in public places. The training has to be at home. If you're not training in the home and they're messed up outside, you're trying to train them outside, but they're not trained at home, they're going to lose their dignity because it's going to be in front of people in public. And you don't want to spank them and yell at them. You need to do it at home. If you can do it at home, okay, then you got it. Then outside. But when they're small, when they're little, you have to train them. Use the rod for spanking. Why? Because the Bible tells us. God knows best. It's been abused. People spank out of anger, and it's been abused, and it's not good. But if you spank in love, it's really good. Here's why it's good. The Bible tells us it's good. Whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves them is careful to discipline them. Look, it said if you don't use the rod, you actually hate them. What? Is that true? It really goes against what the world says. It said folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline will drive it far away. When my children were small, I teach them they have folly in their heart and that the spanking rod would drive it away. See, the rod and rebuke gives wisdom, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. Correct your son, and he will give you rest. Yes, he will give delight to your soul. So the rod will give you delight. It takes away the folly. It takes away the shame. Let me give you an illustration of that. One time we were in China. My sister had her daughter, 2-year-old daughter with her, and the 2-year-old daughter was whining and wasn't obeying her. And she was having a hard time with the daughter. And she looked at me and she said, "Can I help her?" I said, "Yes, of course. Will you give me permission to spank her?" She said, "Yes." So I took the daughter to the room, my little niece, and I spanked her. Okay. And then I brought her back to the dining area in the restaurant. Guess what my little niece said? There were 10 people or so around the table. She said, Uncle, I love you. Can I sit next to you?" Now that's a good spanking because I helped her get rid of the folly, the foolishness that was in her heart. And then she chose to sit next to me. A number of times when my kids were small, after I spanked them, you know what they would say to me? Daddy, I love you. We love you. Because I helped them get rid of the junk in their heart, the folly that is bound up in the heart of a child. It's foolishness. It's sin. And the rod drives it away if you spank it in love. By the way, I did not like spanking my kids. But I did it because number one, the Bible said it. 2, God tells me to. Number 2, because when I applied it in the right way, not out of anger, I never spanked my kids when I was angry. If you spank your kids when you're angry, it's the worst thing you can do. That's where abuse comes in. And that's where you get a lot of abuse because people don't know how to do it in love. But if you do it right, it's going to bring wisdom. It drives the folly, the foolishness away. It removes the shame and it gives you, the mother, the father, delight. It's awesome. Okay? Let's see.
Pastor Simeon.
Yes.
So what if I already made that mistake and I did before spank with anger, and then so now she has a lot of resentment about it, obviously. And so now we've moved away and we don't spank at all because it just makes her so angry and hurt,
Yes.
So then I'm not sure how to then go, is it better just not to go back to spanking or help her release some of the, I don't know. Well, but we've already been there and made that mistake.
Right.
So
So if you have little children and you can start anew, you can choose the right path. But if you already made the mistakes and you did it out of anger, and they're getting older, they're 9 years old, 10 years old. By the way, I don't spank teenagers. Okay. I'm trying to remember, when did I stop spanking my kids? I don't remember. I honestly don't remember when I stopped. Maybe when they were 7, 8 years old. So I don't know if sometimes it depends on the kids, but I don't remember spanking them when they were 9. So maybe it's good to no longer use spanking. They're 9, but here's what I
okay.
yes.
Yeah, I mean it's been a few years.
Right.
Um
So
so we're out of that phase though. So
little
that's good.
children, it's great. Little children, it's great. When they get
Okay.
older, and somewhere, depending on the kids that we have, somewhere along the line, you got to stop. Um, Definitely, teenagers is no good. Okay, that doesn't work anymore. Now, if you made a mistake, and you made mistakes before, and you spank out of anger, then there's a couple of things to approach it. Number one, you can apologize. Okay, and so sorry, mommy did it wrong, daddy did it wrong. I was angry. Would you forgive me? Number two, if you can help her get rid of the anger, will she forgive you? And if she say yes, and if she still has anger in her heart, are you willing to give that to the Lord? Okay. And if she gives that to the Lord, then it'll be so much easier. Now, some of them might not be willing to give it to the Lord. Okay. And if they are not willing, you can't force it, but you keep loving them. Does that make sense? You keep loving them. All right. And eventually, with
Yeah.
love, they'll be willing to give to the Lord. But then you still, at 9 years old, you still need to set up certain boundaries. All right. And when they move to teenagers, 13, somewhere, and it's depending on the kid. If some kid mature a little bit earlier, you move to that, giving them choices earlier. But you still need to train them even at 9 years old to obey. But keep this in mind. Your goal is not to make them outwardly compliant, but inwardly rebellious, but you want to develop them to choose to obey, the Christ-like characters. So your attitude, your love and attitude is so important. Our love and attitude is so important. We want to love them. More, as they get older, more of this will be caught than taught. Remember, you're always training them. And how you train them, your attitude, if you train them in anger, it never works. Okay, so these are some guidelines. Let me talk about training small children first. Okay, and then we move to the 9-year-old. If you're going to train small children, a lot of people want to train little children not to touch the plugs. God did not train the people by removing the things. Like, if I want to train my children, don't touch the glass that's on the table that they can reach, like a coffee table or a table that they can reach. And it's a glass. And I don't remove the temptation. Sometimes you put it right on that table and they can reach it. It's very tempting for them. So a lot of parents decide, well, I'm going to remove this so they don't hurt themselves. It's glass and so on. You look at what God did. He did not move that tree that was tempting them out of the garden. He put it right in the middle of the garden and he said, don't touch it. So he was training them. Now, of course, they disobeyed. We know that. But the principle there is that if you're going to train them, so I don't train them not to touch the plug by putting, those things in my plugs so that they don't put the finger in there. But what I do is I train them not to touch it. When they're little kid, I would use a little switch. It's safety training. And I would put them near the plug, the outlet, and I use a little stick and I hit the plug and I say, no, 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 I hit the outlet. When they reach the outlet, I just very lightly tap their hands and it stings a little bit. I say no with a smile, no. I do it a couple of times. After that, they never touch the plug. The same thing, if I don't want them to touch a glass on the table, I put the glass right there. I just say, no, no, no. If they try to reach it, poop, no. Very gentle. And from then on, they never touch my glass again. If I'm consistent with it, it works all the time. So I use that training a lot when the kids are small. Okay? Train them not to go into the kitchen. Very simple. Why? Because of safety issues. I don't want them to hurt themselves. Because if I go to another person's home and they stick their finger in the outlet there, it can cause some problems. So that they learned at a very age not to do that. They've never had an issue with it. They never had an issue with going to the kitchen, touching the fire, playing with knives. But when they were 8 years old, I trained them how to use a knife, how to cut the fish, clean a fish. They were 19 years old. They cleaned 50 fish by themselves with a knife. So you can train them to eat whatever you want them to eat, if that's an issue. All right, so let's talk about that. No matter how old they are. In America, that's an issue. I don't know, it might not be an issue in Malaysia and other countries, but it's an issue here in the US. So I train them to eat what we put in front of them. If they don't eat it, if they don't eat their lunch, then I don't get upset with them. I'm not angry. I'm not going to force them to eat. Oh, I see that you're not very hungry today. Well, if you're not going to eat, it's okay. It's okay. Daddy loves you. We'll just save it for dinner. So they're not eating. We save it for dinner. I'm not angry with them. They want other food to eat. Oh, sorry. This is what we're eating, but you don't want to eat it. It's okay, but you don't get, we already have a rule in the house. You don't get what you whine for. You want other food? So sorry. This is what we're eating today. All right? But we love you. We love you, honey. We love you, Cindy. We love you, Eileen. And by the way, my kids never whine about food that they eat. They're very good eaters. But if they struggle with eating it, we save it for dinner. And guess what? Dinner time, mommy, daddy, and the rest of us, we're eating a new meal. And guess what? They get to eat the same lunch. We put it in front of them. Well, how come mommy and daddy get to eat something different and I don't get to eat something different? Well, because you didn't eat your lunch. You want something different? Let's eat your lunch. But I don't like my lunch. Well, so sorry, honey. If you don't like it, you don't have to eat it. It's your choice. You don't have to eat it. We'll just save it for breakfast. Okay? Some parents are afraid, oh man, I'm going to starve my kids. No, the kids won't starve if they don't eat for 24 hours. Okay? They won't starve if they don't eat for 48 hours. All right? They'll be very hungry. So breakfast, guess what they're going to have? The same food. By that time, they should be really hungry. And it won't be, a problem anymore. Very easy, okay? So we eat our food. We might eat a dessert. They don't get it because they don't eat dessert if they don't eat their food. But there's no anger. There's no, forcing. There's no demands. Very easy. I'm just giving you an example. All right. So if you want to train your children to obey, choose the item that you want them to obey. If they're going to obey, if they don't obey, what are the consequences? When it comes to food, if they don't eat the food that you put in front of them, you want them to eat. Well, the consequences is they don't get dessert. They don't get any other food, but with love. So you have to train them with the right attitude, with love. If you do that one time, if they skip 2 meals, by the time you put that food out for them on the 3rd meal, they will be so happy because they'll be so hungry. And the food, you know how when you're so hungry, even broccoli looks like candy. That's how it works. But so if you want them to obey, what are your consequences if they don't obey? And that's what you got to think through. And you need to talk to them about that. You know, like if you haven't done it right, help get rid of the anger first. Okay. So Kiki, you have a good question. Apologize if you need to, help them get rid of anger, but let them know that they're going to be under new management. It's a management of love, but of obedience, and this is what we expect. And if they don't obey, these are the consequences. And you got to think this thing through. Think it through with your husband, think it through with your wives, you know, your spouse. Think it through and then be consistent in it. If you say it and you want it, then do it. But here's the thing. If you do it one time, but you don't do it a second time, and you do it a third time, but you don't do it a fourth time, you're training them the inconsistency. And anytime a kid learn inconsistency and they see that you're not consistent, they're always thinking, well, maybe I'll get it. I'll get what I want that next time. So they're not going to obey. So you got to be consistent. By the way, this other area about sharing, it's really majority of the parents train this, like, you know, if you have siblings fighting over a toy, or worse yet, if you have a visitor's kid, a friend's kid, they come and they fight over the toy with your kids. Most parents will say this. Most parents say, Johnny, if Johnny's your kid, why don't you give your toy to the friend? They're your friend, they're the visitors. Be loving and share your toy with them, right? Or if your own two children are fighting over a toy, you say, Johnny, learn to share with your family. Give them your toy, right? So why do we do that as parents? Because we want to teach our children the character of sharing. That's a good character to share, but there's a problem. The problem is if you force them to share versus they choose to share themselves. Hey, how would you like it if the government comes knocking on your door and said, you know, your neighbor needs a car, so give them your car. It's good for you to share. You have two cars. Why don't you give one of your car to your neighbor because they have a need? And you're forced to do it. No, none of us like it when it's forced upon us. Don't force your kids. Let's say your two siblings are fighting over a toy. Don't force your kid to give it, but you train them. You train them. If Johnny is fighting with the sister about a toy, you say, wait a minute, sister, this is Johnny's toy. You have your toy. Now, if Johnny chooses to share, but because you're fighting, you don't get to play with one another. And if Johnny said, no, mommy, I want to share, that's different because they're choosing. Okay? Very important. You don't train a person to share by forcing them to share. So they have consequences and then help them make the right decision. There's another issue with parenting. Another issue with parenting is emotional control. Sometimes kids get frustrated, something's not right. Parents are so frustrated about what's going on. And sometimes the parents have a bad attitude and the parents say things, Johnny, you know how mommy is so sad. And when you do this, I'm so sad. And you make me so sad. Oh, and then you cry. And little Johnny, oh, I don't want mommy to cry. Sorry, mommy. That's emotional control. Okay. Look, if you and I want our kids to live in peace, we need to live in peace. We need to demonstrate peace. If we want them to live in joy, we need to demonstrate joy. If they do something wrong, then we fix it, but we do it with love. Don't try to emotionally manipulate the children. That's wrong too, okay? Okay, Now, if the kids like to scream all the time, especially they're young, you can stop that very easily using the switch. If the kids like to scream, when they scream, you just switch them and say, no, we don't do that. Okay, you do that a couple of times, they just stop screaming. Okay, let me see. ADD is a major issue, ADD, ADHD. Um, and maybe that's not the case 100% of the time, but the majority of the time is the lack of boundaries and love in the house. You put boundaries and love, ADD, ADHD will be taken care of. Okay. All right. Let me see. Bullying. Bullying is a big issue. Sometimes we bully at home too. You know, one kid bully another kid, or a friend bully them, and so on. You got to get down to the heart of it. If you're facing a kid bullying another kid and your kid is involved or something, you got to help them understand the heart issue. A good question to ask, a good question, is it fun for, is it fun for you when you bully, when you pick on your sister? Is it fun when somebody picks on you? Is your sister having fun? If someone did this to you, would you be having fun? You want to get them to understand. You don't just discipline them, but in this case, you want to help them understand it from a heart issue. Because if they can choose it from a heart issue and they know that bullying causes hurt, and if they get bullied, it hurts them, they'll choose to stop. So you train them to choose, to make the right decision. Okay? Dealing with conflicts. All right, now it could be conflict with you, conflict with the children or the friends. Always make negative behaviors counterproductive. Determine what they want to gain from the conflict. If they fight for a toy, then nobody gets the toy unless, you know, it's ownership. If it's ownership, the one person gets it. But if they're fighting for it, then nobody gets it. If they fight over who gets to wash the dishes, then let both wash the dish, you know. And I don't want to teach my kids to tell on the other kids all the time. That's not a good thing. I don't like that. But train them from an attitude level. So to answer Kiki's question, I'm giving you a lot of information here. If you want to train your son, your daughter to obey, your children to obey, if they don't obey, you yourself need to have a good attitude. And if your goal is obedience and joyful attitude, you need to have a good, joyful attitude. Because why are you training them? If there's anger, you've already messed up. Get rid of the anger, be joyful about it. If you want them to obey joyfully, you need to be joyful. Number one. Number two, there's consequences. If they don't obey you, what are the consequences? It's gotta be something that will make the outcome negative for them. If they don't obey, what are the negative things, discipline that you will give them where they understand? And that's what you need to do. I don't like putting them in the corner. People teach about putting kids in the corner because if you put kids in the corner, they sit there, they're by themselves. Sometimes they're ashamed, and sometimes they think they're so angry, they think of all the negative thoughts. And that's just festering the negative thoughts. I don't like that. Make it negative, but do it with love. Okay? If you don't spank them, what are some of the things that you can do to train them and discipline them? Well, what are the negative things? You know, what are some of the things that they like to do? They don't get to do it with love. And be consistent with it. Okay? So that's the key thing. Video gamings and so on, by the time they're addicted to video games, the problem is much bigger. You know, they're rebelling, they're not obeying you. And you're telling them not to do those things, and they don't listen to you. This is much bigger problem. The problem, they have a lot of hurt. They don't have good relationship with you because they're not going to listen to you. So if you're going to do that, then what you want to do then is help them, restore the relationship with them. Once you restore relationship with them, you find ways to spend time with them. Come on, guys. Honestly, I don't want to go to the Grand Canyon to hike. I'm going to suffer. Really, honestly, that's not my cup of tea. But why do I do it? Because I love my daughter. I'm going to spend time, and I love my wife. I'm going to spend time with them. They want to do it. I'm going to try. Okay, I need to get in shape. But when they're struggling with video games and they're addicted to it, the relationship is the issue and the time is the issue. We're not spending enough time with them. And they're not experiencing love. That's the key thing to breaking that. All right, teenagers. Okay, I've already talked a lot about that. Our environment, you know, and our love with them, we don't have the relationship with them. And then we got to teach them how to make the right choice. So I've talked a lot about that already. So I'm actually kind of glad Kiki asked the question. I wasn't thinking that you would be on today, and I'm glad you asked. Are there any other questions? So I spent a little bit more time. Any other question about it? And I think it was good for me to share this thing with you. But do you have any other questions?
Pastor,
Yes.
is this the teaching you have already done or you are going to do on October the 19th?
No, October the 19th, I'm going to do it on the spiritual gifts.
Okay.
This is going to help you identify spiritual gifts in yourself and in others, including your own children, but anyone, in how you can help them walk in their gifts and their calling. Okay?
So today's lesson is nothing to do with October 19th because I told my friend about this. She asked me, when is this going to go on? I didn't know, did we already done this before? Have we already done this before?
Have you done what before?
Today's that you were just sharing about these practical ways of disciplining children.
No, it's recorded so they can get it.
Oh, okay. It is recorded. It's on the module 456, Living at the Kingdom Life.
Yes, it's going to be under, this is family, so under living.
Okay.
I'll send you the link to it. But
Okay.
it's recorded.
Okay. I would like to translate. Is that already translated in Chinese on this class? I would like to teach this one after the kingdom discipleship.
Yes, so this is for kingdom family. But if you want to help people have better families, see, in the past, I just did parenting training and how to teach kids to obey, but I discovered that's wrong. If you teach them to obey, but you don't have the right goals for them, you know, if you're not loving them and spending time with them, and if teaching them to obey, it's only one of the 4 or 5 major items that they need to do. We need to love them, spend time with them. We teach them to obey. We have to establish, we don't provoke them to anger, but establish environment of love. And then we teach them in God's path and God's purpose for them. Okay. So if we want godly kingdom families, we got to go through all of that. If you just teach kids to obey and there's no love, you're going to have a lot of rebellion. They'll obey you, but once they leave the house, they're going to hate you. So we got to make sure we have all of those in place in order to have a good family. And so this is what we've been teaching on Tuesdays. It's called Kingdom Family. So that will be on the website.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, any other question? Kiki, I hope that helps some.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and if you have
Thank you, Simeon.
any other specific question, you're welcome to ask. Do it with love and be consistent in it. Once you do it with love and consistency, you got it. And keep it easy.
What about, does it has to do with the parenting or just with discipleship?
John, is that a question?
Yes, are you asking for questions about parenting, our topic, or about discipleship?
Well, we're talking about the family, but you can ask any question.
Yes. How did Christ love the church?
How did Christ love the church? That's a good question in many ways. But if you read, Christ loved the church. He was willing to give up his life for her, for the church, right? So greater love has no one than this, than he who laid down his life for the friend. And so, husband, love your wife as Christ loved the church. Are you willing to give up your life for her? That is really the greatest love. If we love our children, we know that they need an organ, and if we really love them, and we know that if we give up our organ, we might die, that's really great love. So are we willing to lay down our lives for our wives? And that question has to do with Ephesians 5:25. Husband, love your wife as Christ loved the church. So when you meditate on that verse, John, you memorize that verse, and then you begin to ask the Lord, Lord, how can I love my wife as Christ loved the church? Show me how I can love her. What are the areas that she needs to be loved? And remember the areas that she needs to be loved. You can't give everything that a person asks for. Well, let me rephrase it. You shouldn't give everything that a person asks for if those things are outside the boundaries of love. Because if the kids keep asking for all kinds of toys and you just give them to them all the time, that's not love. A wife can ask for many different things, but if you give her all these things, it's not necessarily love. If it's go outside the boundary of God. It's like, for us to ask God, God will answer all our prayers if it's according to his will. There's boundaries associated to love. Love comes with boundaries. If the kids ask for drugs, I'm not going to give them drugs. That's not love. Okay? So these different kinds of things. Love comes with boundaries, but do keep this in mind. If what they're asking for is within the boundaries, I will do it. So I actually look for things that makes my wife feel love. And it's within the boundary, and then I do it. So one of the things that I like to do is what makes them feel love. What do they like to do? The reason we're going to the Grand Canyon, I'm being honest with you. I don't like traveling. I don't like visiting new places. I don't like sightseeing. I don't like hiking. But why are you doing it? Because Kay and Eileen loves to do it. That's why. Okay? So I try to find the things that will make them feel loved. And I do those things, even though I might not like them. Not them, the people, but them, the activities. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All righty. Any other question? Okay, let me look at the chat and see what you guys sent me. Maybe there's a question in there. Let's see. Okay. Which presentation is this? Is this on the website? This is going to be Kingdom Family, lesson number 8. Yes, 6. Sorry, lesson number 6. We're going to put it on the website. Brandon said the information is helpful for him as well. Okay, Aaron, I'm glad. You said you can see the tips and you can apply some of these things. I'm so glad. Okay. Well, this concludes our teaching for the Kingdom family. I hope you guys understand this, and we'll have it out on the website, and you're welcome to look at it. This is number 6, and it concludes it. I'm glad Kiki asked the question because they're practical, really practical example on how to train little kids, and then how to train teenagers, how to build relationship with them, and how to grow in all of that. What's the hope and desire is that you and I and our family can live the kingdom life, and they can grow up to be mighty men and women of God, walking with, that kind of life that God has for them along his path. And then will be the testimony for many others and help them to do the same. So Father, thank you so much for this teaching and for your word and for the time and for everybody here. We pray blessing and transformation over their families and the relationship, all these things because of who you are and your love for us. We give you glory and honor in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'm going to